The verdict, the emergency medical bay of forward operating base Nexus, reeked of antiseptic and desperation. Sparks cascaded from damaged overhead lights as explosions echoed through the facility's reinforced walls. The Crithian insurgents had breached the outer perimeter, and wounded soldiers flooded in faster than the medical staff could process them. Dr. Veari of the Jalari Collective moved with practiced efficiency between the wounded, her four delicate arms working in perfect synchronization. Her pale blue skin shimmered with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep concentration. A trait her species had evolved over millennia of careful, methodical healing practices. To the Jalari, medicine was an art form requiring patience, precision, and acceptance of natural limitations. Next casualty, called Nurse Zorin, a burly Kandorian whose thick carapace was splattered with various alien blood types. He gestured toward a gurney where a human soldier lay motionless, his tactical gear torn and bloodied beyond recognition. Veari approached the human with her scanner already activated. The device's holographic display painted a grin picture in soft amber light. Sergeant Cole Miles, she read from his damaged identification tags. Multiple lacerations, severe blood loss, and ... Her secondary eyes widened as she detected the telltale neurological patterns. Xerithi, venom poisoning. Stage 4 progression. The Xerithi were genetically engineered apex predators deployed by the Crithian force's six-legged nightmares with venomous fangs designed to cause maximum suffering. Their toxin attacked the nervous system in waves, each stage more devastating than the last. Stage 4 meant complete paralysis was imminent, followed by respiratory failure. Veari's diagnostic equipment confirmed what her medical training had taught her. No known species had ever survived beyond Stage 3. The venom was specifically designed to exploit universal neurological vulnerabilities that all sentient species shared. She had seen dozens of soldiers from various coalition races succumb to this exact condition. His spinal cord is severed at the lumbar region, she announced to her team, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of Jalari speech. Neural pathways are degrading rapidly. Cardiovascular system is in progressive failure. She looked down at the human's face-pale, bloodied, but somehow still bearing the stubborn expression she had learned to associate with his species. Even unconscious, humans seemed to carry an inexplicable defiance in their features. The venom has no cure, she declared, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to the somber blue that indicated acceptance of death. His systems are shutting down. Prepare for loss. It was a statement she had made countless times before. In Jalari culture, acknowledging the inevitable was not surrender. It was wisdom. Fighting against the natural order only brought unnecessary suffering. She began to turn away, already mentally moving to the next patient, when something impossible happened behind her. The impossible wet, ragged sound cut through the ambient noise of the medical bay, the sound of air being forced through damaged lungs with desperate determination. Veari's four arms froze mid-motion as her sensitive hearing picked up what should have been impossible. The human was still breathing, and breathing with purpose. She turned back to see Sergeant Miles' right hand slowly, tremblingly, forming a fist. His knuckles were white with effort, tendons standing out like steel cables beneath torn skin. The diagnostic equipment shrieked in confusion as his vital signs spiked in patterns that defied everything she knew about Xerithi venom progression. Impossible, she whispered, her bioluminescent patterns flickering between confusion and alarm. The neural pathways are completely severed. He should have no motor control below the chest. But Cole Miles was moving with mechanical precision that spoke of countless hours of battlefield experience. His hands found his tactical vest. His fingers, guided by muscle memory and sheer determination, located a damaged stim injector, device that should have been useless with its cracked casing and broken display. Veari watched in fascination and horror as the human began what could only be described as impromptu surgery on himself. Using fragments of his own equipment, he jury-rigged the broken stim injector to his suit's power cell. Sparks flew as damaged circuits connected in ways that violated every safety protocol. In the Coalition manual, "Stop," Veari commanded, stepping forward. "You're going to kill yourself faster." Cole's eyes snapped open bloodshot, pain-filled, but blazing with an intensity that made the Jelari doctor step back. "Already?" "Dying," he rasped through gritted teeth, blood speckling his lips. "Might as well. ... Guy trying." His improvised device hummed to life, and he jammed it directly into his chest, just above his heart. The stim injector, now overcharged and repurposed, sent a massive surge of synthetic adrenaline and electrical stimulation directly into his cardiac system. The shock should have killed him instantly. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Human body's stress response system, already pushed beyond normal limits by combat and injury, responded to the artificial surge in ways that Veari's medical knowledge couldn't explain. His heart rate spiked to levels that should have caused immediate cardiac arrest, but instead seemed to supercharge his circulation. The increased blood flow began forcing the Zirathi venom through his system faster than it could take hold of. Individual neural clusters. By the eternal light, Nurse Zorin breathed, watching the monitors in disbelief. His nervous system is rebooting itself. The venom, designed to work slowly and methodically through the nervous system, was being overwhelmed by the human's chemically enhanced fight-or-flight response. Cole's body was essentially burning itself as fuel to stay alive, biological scorched earth tactic that no other species would survive, even if they could conceive of attempting it. Veari's scanner showed impossible readings. Neural pathways that had been dark were suddenly blazing with activity. His severed spinal cord was somehow transmitting signals through sheer electrical brute force, and his body temperature was rising to levels that should have caused brain death. The will to survive, the medical bay fell silent, except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment that was struggling to make sense of Cole's vital signs. Veari found herself paralyzed by something she had never experienced in her 15 years of medical practice. Complete bewilderment in what she was witnessing. Cole's body was systematically overriding every biological safety mechanism that evolution had installed. His immune system was attacking the Zirathi venom with such ferocity that his white blood cell count resembled that of someone fighting off a dozen infections simultaneously. His adrenal glands were producing chemicals at rates that should have caused them to rupture, yet they continued functioning. "Doctor," Nurse Zorin said quietly, "his neural activity it's unlike anything in our databases." Veari's multiple eyes studied the readouts with growing amazement. The human brain, faced with the choice between accepting death or burning itself out completely, had chosen the latter. Cole's neurons were firing in patterns that created temporary bypass routes around damaged tissue. It was as if his mind was manually rewiring itself in real time, using pure willpower as a conductor. The venom should have reached his brainstem by now, she murmured, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to colors that indicated deep scientific curiosity. But his body is fighting it off through sheer metabolic violence. Cole's breathing steadied, though it remained labored. His eyes, though still glazed with pain, tracked movement in the room. When he tried to speak, his voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the same defiant tone that had first caught her attention. "How long?" he asked. "How long what?" Veari replied, leaning closer despite every instinct telling her to maintain clinical distance. "How long ... till I can ... walk again?" The question was so absurd that Veari almost laughed. His spinal cord was severed. Even if he survived the venom, which was medically impossible, he would never walk again. No species in the known galaxy had ever regenerated spinal tissue. "Sergeant, you need to understand," she began. "No," Cole interrupted, his voice gaining strength. "You need to understand. I've got brothers out there. Marines trapped behind enemy lines. They're counting on me." He began the excruciating process of sitting up, his improvised life support system sparking and crackling with each movement. Veari watched in horror and fascination as he ignored every pain signal his body was sending, every logical reason to remain still and accept medical treatment. "Your body is consuming itself to stay alive," she explained urgently. "Even if the venom doesn't kill you, this metabolic overdrive will cause organ failure within hours. You need to remain still and let you what?" Cole's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Veari saw something that shook her to her core. It wasn't just determination or stubbornness. It was absolute, unwavering refusal to accept defeat. "Let you make me comfortable while I die? While my men die?" He swung his legs over the side of the gurney, and Veari's scanner immediately detected the impossible. Nerve impulses were somehow reaching his lower extremities. Damaged, chaotic, but present. The question how? The word escaped Veari's lips before she could stop it, carrying with it the weight of everything she had believed about biology, medicine, and the fundamental limits of living beings. Cole looked at her with those pain-filled but unbroken eyes, and his response would haunt her for the rest of her life. "You gave up." "I didn't." The simplicity of the statement was devastating. In those 5 words, he had encapsulated everything that separated his species from hers. The Gelari had evolved wisdom, patience, and acceptance of natural order. They had created a civilization based on harmony with the universe's rhythms, never fighting against the inevitable. But humans, Veari realized with crystalline clarity, had evolved something far more dangerous: the absolute refusal to accept the inevitable. "That's not how biology works," she whispered. But even as she said it, she knew she was wrong. She was watching biology work in ways that her species had never imagined possible. Cole managed to stand, his legs shaking violently, but supporting his weight. The improvised device on his chest sparked and smoked, its jury-rigged components failing under the strain. It didn't matter, his body had apparently learned to produce the chemicals it needed without artificial assistance. "Biology," he said, taking a stumbling step toward his discarded weapon, "is just ... the starting point. Will is what ... What makes the difference?" Veari's medical training screamed that this was impossible. The human should be dead. If not from the venom, then from the massive metabolic overdrive he had triggered. If not from that, then from attempting to walk on a severed spinal cord. Yet here he was, defying every natural law she understood. "Where are you going?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Back to my men," Cole replied, checking his rifle with hands that still trembled, but held steady enough to operate the weapon. "They're pinned down in Sector 7. Krithian ambush. If I don't get there soon ... He didn't need to finish. Veari had seen enough casualty reports to know what happened when humans were cut off from support. Unlike other species, they didn't surrender when outgunned. They fought until the last breath, often taking impossible odds with them. "You'll die before you reach them," she said, but it wasn't a medical assessment anymore. It was a plea. Cole turned back to her, and for a moment, his expression softened. "Maybe, but they'll die for sure if I don't try." He paused, studying her face. "Your people, the Gelari, you've never had to fight for survival, have you?" The question caught her off guard. "We evolved past the need for." "No," Cole interrupted, gently. "You evolved past the ability to. There's a difference." As he moved toward the exit, each step a monumental effort that should have been impossible, Veari found herself following. not as a doctor trying to stop a patient, but as a being who had just witnessed something that challenged every assumption she had about the nature of life itself. Outside the medical bay, the sounds of battle grew louder. Explosions echoed through the corridors as Krithian forces pressed their attack. Cole paused at the threshold, gathering strength for what lay ahead. Months after the Battle of Nexus, the Coalition Medical Corps established the first Human Resilience Research Institute on the neutral world of Kepler Prime. Dr. Veyari served as its director, leading a team of xenobiologists, psychologists, and medical researchers from dozens of species, all united by a single goal: understanding the phenomenon that had come to be known as the human factor. The Institute's first breakthrough came not from studying human biology, but from studying human culture. Researchers discovered that human children were taught from birth that impossible was merely a challenge to overcome, not a boundary to accept. Their literature, mythology, and entertainment all reinforced the same message: that will could triumph over circumstance, that the individual could overcome impossible odds through determination alone. It's not genetic, Veyari explained to a gathering of coalition medical officials. It's societal. Humans have evolved a culture that programs their minds to reject defeat at the neurological level. When faced with death, their brains literally rewire themselves to find alternative solutions. The research had profound implications for the ongoing war. Human units, once considered valuable but expendable shock troops, were now recognized as force multipliers, capable of achieving victory in scenarios where other species would calculate defeat as inevitable. The Krithian Empire, which had initially dismissed humans as primitive newcomers, found themselves retreating from sectors they had held for decades. But perhaps the most significant change was in the coalition itself. Other species began incorporating human training methods into their own military and medical programs. The Jalari, renowned for their acceptance of natural order, started teaching their young about the power of constructive defiance. The crystalline Kenthari developed new therapies based on willpower rather than purely biological intervention. Sergeant Cole Miles, now Lieutenant Colonel Miles, became the first human to command a multi-species special operations unit. His teams, composed of soldiers from across the coalition who had learned to apply human-style determination to their own abilities, achieved success rates that military strategists had deemed mathematically impossible. On the anniversary of his resurrection, Cole visited Dr. Veyari at the Research Institute. He walked without assistance, his spine having regenerated in ways that alien medical science was still struggling to understand. They stood together in the observation deck, watching human instructors teach alien recruits the fundamentals of applied impossibility. "Do you ever regret it?" Veyari asked. "Choosing to fight death instead of accepting it peacefully?" Cole considered the question, watching a young Jalari trainee successfully complete an obstacle course that would have been impossible for her species just months before. "Every choice has consequences," he said finally. "But I've learned that the biggest consequence of all is the choice not to choose, to let circumstances decide your fate instead of deciding it yourself." As the war continued to turn in the Coalition's favor, a new understanding emerged among the allied species. Humans hadn't just brought weapons or technology to the fight. They had brought something far more dangerous to their enemies and far more valuable to their friends: the unshakable belief that impossible was just another word for not yet achieved. The human spirit, it turned out, was contagious. And in a universe full of species that had learned to accept their limitations, perhaps that was the most dangerous weapon of all.